Probably because of the limited visual education most of us have. When we start to get really into comics, we are grasping for a clear, objective way to see if what we're reading or what we're doing is any good. We know what we like, but is it good and why? We search for something authoritative, and eventually we get to the 180-degree rule. But what is it? Well, let's imagine you have two characters talking on set. The rule says that you should draw an imaginary line between them and never have the camera cross it. Why? Because if you do, the characters will switch places on the screen. The one initially on the right side of the screen will appear on the left side, and the one on the right side will appear on the left. At first, this hardly sounds catastrophical, but let's say you have those characters in a shot reverse shot. And why shouldn't you? It's a very versatile technique. You can have the characters talk to one another, react, even stare awkwardly, maybe without even having all the actors in the same room. And it can save time and money. You don't need to get the whole conversation in one shot, you just need to get good line readings from the actors, then assemble them, which might be much easier. This is the magic of film. Part of the trick stays in the eye line. As long as the characters have matching eye lines between cuts, which is to say, they seem to look at each other, you can get away with lots of stuff. This is where the 180-degree rule comes into play, because it makes sure that you don't have a character talking nonsensically to another character's back. Similar principles apply to movement. When cutting, you generally want to preserve the actor's direction of movement, not have them flail willy-nilly around the screen. If you have a character exit from one side of the screen, you'd want them entering from the one opposite, not from the same one, as if they forgot something and went back. So, the 180-degree rule is just a way of preventing at the production stage some problems that might appear in editing. Moreover, the rule presupposes and even imposes some pretty limiting compositions and means of conveying movement and dialogue. All of these make it more of an industry guideline that assures timely and uneventful production, not an artistic rule that needs to be followed through and through. It's a convention. And if everything is done through the prism of the 180-degree rule, it makes things look conventional. It can prohibit you from finding new and exciting ways of staging a scene. On top of it all, we talked a lot about sets and cameras and shots and editing and actors, all of which aren't really a thing in comics, at least not in the same way as they're in film. Let us consider a few things. In comics, we don't always have a single constant shape for the frame, or panels as we call them, in which case having the characters occupy the same side of the panel becomes a non-applicable concept. A figure's position in the panel doesn't have the same meaning if the panel changes shapes and sizes. Also, consider that we're using speech bubbles to convey speech and show who's speaking. Speech bubbles also are a way of drawing the reader's eye, focusing and refocusing them on subjects, which means that if a scene could be done in film as a series of shot reverse shots, in comics it might be drawn in just a panel or two, with framings that make the rule pointless to consider. Then keep in mind that a panel transition in comics isn't the same as a cut in film. In film, a cut aims to preserve the continuity of space and movement in a scene, up to the transition to a new scene where the continuity is broken. In comics, things are a bit different. So much so that Scott McCloud identified 6 panel-to-panel transitions, with Jessica Abel and Matt Madden adding a 7th. They are as follows: moment to moment, action to action, subject to subject, scene to scene, aspect to aspect, non sequitur, and metaphoric transition. They are concerned, more than anything, with the amount of time, if any, that passes between the two panels, and what the transition asks of the reader to infer. Reading comics, we don't expect the same feeling of a continuous, unbroken time, as is the case with film. We constantly make little leaps of faith without being confused or becoming unimmersed in the action, and we even need such dramatic changes in the spatial relationship between characters to have a sense of the amount of time that passed between two panels. This is a tool at the disposal of comics, a feature, not a bug. Finally, in film, the images are strung together through time. We stare at the screen and the images change before our very eyes. They become layered on top of each other. But in comics, we read through them and they feel more akin to the pieces of a puzzle. The way they flow on the page, how each panel guides your eye to the next one, gives as much a sense of continuity and momentum, if not more, as having the images immediately spatially congruous. The rhythm of the images has to accommodate the Z pattern in which we read the comics page if we don't want the reader to struggle against them. Considering all of these, we realize that the 180-degree rule doesn't make complete sense in comics, and it could even be harmful because it makes us conceptualize comics as a different medium, which at best limits us to only the filmic techniques that work in comics and probably don't function as well, while inhibiting us from trying more comic-specific approaches. And not only that we might ignore tools from the toolbox, but it has us focused on flaws that are very important in film but negligible in comics, making us miss very important comic-specific mistakes. Does that mean that it's wrong to observe as much as you can the 180-degree rule? Not at all. Having characters match eye lines and appear constantly on the side of a panel is a valid way of creating continuity and have the action just click, without demanding from the reader that extra bit of mental processing required to get where the characters are in relation to one another. And indeed, at many times you'll find yourself doing this automatically for the sake of consistency and continuity, especially if the art and storytelling style requires it. It doesn't mean that is the only way or always the best way, just the safest. Far from being some mark of quality, a proof that the authors are following the sacred rules, they're more of a mark of, it works.